We're going to do some introductions here before we formally get into the program here in a few minutes, and I think it's fair to allow for some time for that because one of the things that the Chamber is responsible for is creating networking opportunities to meet new people. So very quickly, around the room, say your name and your company, and those of you that are new, who don't know those individuals, take the time afterwards to go grab them and extend a handshake, a business card, and get acquainted. Because at the end of the day, to be the best Chickasha possible, we've got to be familiar, family with each other so that we can be great ambassadors, not just to ourselves, but to our guests who come and live, work, and play in our community. Right there. Randy, tell everybody real quick, where are we on this little project?
Chickasha Movement was created to support local police fallen or injured. You know, 5 were injured a week ago, 10 days ago. And so far, 6 local banks have teamed up to raise $6,500 and we're giving to Chickasha Blue Line. Make your check to Chickasha Blue Line. This is nice.
Thank you very much, man. We're pleased today to have a great panel here in a few moments after our sponsors make a few comments. Many of you know USAO and John Fever, and John has served as the Chancellor, Advisory Chancellor in Oklahoma State Regents for Higher Education, and the list goes on. And we're very blessed to have John as a leader in our community and USAO. Many of you know that myself and Christy Elkins on economic development are involved in state level things. And when we go around, especially at the Chamber side, people always say to me, man, I would love to have a community like Chickasha. And they always cite downtown, fairgrounds, Festival of Light, USAO, CVTC, and they're starting to talk about Chickasha Public Schools and what we're doing outside the box there. So thank you very much, John. John was one of the first people I met the first couple of days I was in Chickasha. And I asked John, what's his greatest challenge? And he said, getting our own people in our community excited about what we have with our campus and with our students and what that brings to the economy at Chickasha. So it will be fun to hear John's comments there. And then David Cash, who has become a great friend of economic development in terms of understanding that you've got to think outside the box. And we call David at the Chamber Super Cash because he's thinking about workforce development. And he's doing things to allow curriculum changes and enrollment at CVTC for students and things that are desperately needed for our workforce, for our employers that are represented in this room. And then our normally Greg Winters does a remark or two, and he is traveling and he has sent a wonderful lady, Gayla Lutz, who began her career at Dell City and then on to Yukon, and then there was a little tornado her first day at work, I believe it was. And many of us have been tried by fire and error and mistakes. I don't know that anybody has demonstrated leadership under fire and courage as much as Gayla did, because there was a commitment made that evening, I believe, by Dr. Winters that they were going to open in short stead, and she had to carry a lot of weight of that. And I think you'll be delighted to be introduced to the Deputy Superintendent of Canadian Valley Technology Center, Gayla Lutz, who will be speaking momentarily. So thank you so much for being here today. State of Education is a great opportunity for us just to hear about the goals, the dreams, the aspirations of the 3 institutions, Chickasha Public Schools, USAO, and CVTC. And we're privileged to have good people that come forth and happen into the Chamber office every now and then and say hello and introduce themselves. And Bray Haven, to my left here, came to the Chamber office and he said, Mark, I'm representing Oil and Gas Journal, or Oil and Gas Journal, or Oil and Gas Association. So I worked at the Oil and Gas Journal for a lot of years, so I'm thinking about that. And my apologies, Ray. And the Oklahoma Oil and Gas Association, and how can we engage Chickasha? And many of you may have seen yesterday, we posted and uplifted a video with Chris Mosley talking about the oil and gas importance to Chickasha and the scoop. And Bray works with Chad Warmington, and Chad and I work together at the State Chamber. And Bray's going to introduce his colleague, Arnella Cargus, is that correct? And she's the executive vice president. And you, as a community, need to know Bray, because Bray's our field rep to come into Chickasha and get to know you. And the good thing I like about Bray is bringing oil and gas leaders to the chamber, and we're having meetings about how they can get involved in Chickasha, not just in the chamber, but in economic development with Christy. And thank you for that, Bray. So if you guys could extend a nice welcome to Bray, he's going to introduce his colleague, and she's going to make a few comments as the sponsor of today. And the sponsor is the Oklahoma Oil and Gas Association. Forgive me for the Oil and Gas Journal, but that's tattooed on me along with Life is Good in Chickasha, so I tend to think about that in my good times with that team. So Bray, if you could, real quickly.
Yeah, good morning. It's great to see some familiar faces, and I'll brag on Mark just a minute. I'm in a lot of communities throughout oil and gas activity, where oil and gas activity is taking place, and Mark's been very welcoming and really helped me get connected down here in Chickasha, and I appreciate all of you who have welcomed me into your office as well. But bringing remarks on behalf of our association today is Arnella Cargus. Arnella joined the Oklahoma Oil and Gas Association as Executive Vice President last September, following 3.5 years as Vice President of Government Affairs for the State Chamber of Oklahoma. In her role as an advocate and registered lobbyist for these statewide associations, Arnella has worked on energy, natural resources, aerospace, military, technology, telecommunications, transportation and ethics compliance issues. Arnella previously worked for the Oklahoma House of Representatives in various roles, including Deputy Clerk and Parliamentarian, Redistricting Director for 2009 through 2011, and Research Analyst. Prior to working for the state of Oklahoma, Arnella worked for CMA Strategies and Cole Hargrave Snodgrass and Associates, involved in local statewide campaigns, grassroots advocacy, government relations for various corporate clients, polling, market research, and voter contact. Arnella has previous local chamber experience as the executive director of the Seminole Chamber of Commerce in 2004 through 2005. Arnella serves as chair of the Oklahoma Intercollegiate Legislature Foundation and annually as a political party advisor for Girl State. Arnella also presents legislative procedure and parliamentary workshops across the state to various collegiate groups, partisan organizations, leadership entities, advocacy groups, nonprofit boards, and public bodies. Please welcome Arnella.
Thank you, Bray. Just want to tell you a little bit about the Oklahoma Oil and Gas Association. Our primary mission is to really be the voice for the Oklahoma oil and gas industry at the state capitol, to be an advocate on their behalf, as well as at regulatory agencies like the Oklahoma Corporation Commission, Oklahoma Department of Environmental Quality, Oklahoma Water Resources Board. Our goal is to try to make Oklahoma the best environment to do business for oil and gas companies. Our association represents all three sectors of the industry. So upstream, those drillers, exploration and production activities, midstream, which are your pipeline companies, processing plants, and downstream, which are all 4 refiners in the state, are members of our association as well. So even though we're all with the oil and gas industry, we have diverse interests among our association, and we are very excited what is happening in Oklahoma with the SCOOP and the STACK. I think you and Chickasha have seen some of the benefits and the headaches that come with that in terms of already seeing increased local tax collections. I mean, that is up and down the board. So not only, if you read the statewide reports, Treasurer Kim Miller, with gross production tax collections have increased for now 11 consecutive months. So hopefully we're seeing kind of getting out of the downturn. At the Capitol, it amazes me how legislators can forget. I guess it's close to me because I have friends that lost jobs in the oil and gas industry. Between 2015 and 2016, we laid off 22,000 direct employees. That ended up impacting in the manufacturing sector alone 16,000 employees. So that was just in 2016. So thankfully, from the latter half of 2016 to now, you can see us coming out of that thanks to new drilling activity in the SCOOP and STACK plays. I know kind of one of the hot topics. I am by no means an expert in education. That is not anything I've really dealt with except peripherally. But I know one of the concerns for education community is funding and trying to find particularly increased funding for our very dedicated teachers. My sister is an elementary school teacher in Sand Springs, so I know how much they need those extra dollars. So what are the debates? Of course, going on at the Capitol, even though might a little bit be on pause right now, is asking for an increase in the gross production tax. The Oklahoma Oil and Gas Association has opposed an increase in the gross production tax, and we've been trying to share with legislators throughout session and over the summer exactly how many times they had increased taxes on the industry, affecting the gross production tax alone. In 2014, the legislature actually doubled the initial rate for the gross production tax from 1% to 2%. We would get that 1% rate for 48 months or 4 years. In 2014, they doubled that to 2%, and then shortened the amount of time for us to get that lower rate to 36 months. At the time, they also sunset about half of the available incentives for various gross production tax rebates that impacted vertical well operators as well. This year, effective July 1, the legislature moved any remaining wells that were at that 1% rate, because over time, they were drilling those and could have been paying 1% for 4 years. They moved all of those wells to 4%, and they also sunset any remaining incentives. So the oil and gas industry actually has no incentive specific to the industry. Depending on the company and the project, we can enjoy things like Quality Jobs Act and other economic development tools that your companies use and have available. But in terms of gross production tax incentives, those don't exist anymore as of July 1. So I know people feel like the 2% rate is lower compared to other states, and I could spend a lot of time talking about that. But what I will tell you is that 2% rate encourages new investment in Oklahoma. So that 2% rate for 3 years helps companies that are drilling wells that cost anywhere from $7 to $10 to $12 million in the scoop and stack. So one well, that is the capital investment to get the project started, get it in the ground. That doesn't even necessarily include all the labor income and spillover costs in terms of purchasing items, paying sales tax, paying employees, their income tax, corporate income tax. So with the encouragement of that drilling new wells, spills over into all parts of the economy, and so that's why we have been asking to protect that 2% rate, because we don't want that investment going to other states. We have, in fact, Representative Scott Biggs sent my boss Chad an article last night talking about the Permian in Texas. This is more tied to price drop, but how there are now ghost towns in Texas because, when prices dropped, there wasn't money to spend, and they had to do something else. So it's a competitive environment. There are better plays in the United States, and some of them not very far away from us. So we want to make sure when companies are looking at where to invest their capital for drilling new wells next year, that they choose Oklahoma and not Texas and not North Dakota, so they can keep their dollars fueling Oklahoma. And Mark, I don't want to take up too much time. I'm more than glad to answer questions or answer questions afterwards, so you guys can hear from your panel. And Bray and I will be here afterwards to answer more questions. Like Mark said, kind of Bray's role is to be our connection to the communities. Like I said, our primary mission is to be a voice at the capital and regulatory agencies, but our operators who have operated in other places where activity increased really fast realizes the headaches that can come with that, increased truck traffic. We haven't seen this very much in Oklahoma, but North Dakota had problems with man camps, where you had, kind of entire fields of people just setting up. Sometimes running out of hotel space. So all those issues that impact the community, we want to know and be aware of those and see what we can do to address concerns, because we want to be good partners in the community. Thank you, Mark.
One of the things you hit on is something we're familiar with, hotel space. So we've had a lot of conversation about that as a community. Thank you so much. And Bray, thank you for bringing us the sponsorship and a great team member to talk a little bit about what's going on in oil and gas. And if you guys recall, last summer we brought Bob Tippie from the Oil and Gas Journal to Chickasha to talk about what's going on in global markets. So we continue to update rig data statuses on Facebook and other articles related to oil and gas. And thank you for taking some of our community leaders, not just here with Chris Mosley in video, but Minco and other communities out of Grady County to talk about what oil and gas is doing here in our community. So first up this time, John and I always wonder what the order will be every year, don't we, John? We're going to do David Cash, and then we're going to do John Fever, and then we're going to do Gayla on her comments to close things out on CVTC, and then we'll take questions if anybody has some. So without further ado, and to keep us on schedule, David Cash.
I don't know about you, but I don't know if that's on. Oh, it's on the radio. Sorry, radio, for tapping your mic there. That'll sound great. You're a good editor. You make my interviews sound decent. So, first, thank you all for hosting this. This is always a great time to share the positive things going on in Chickasha, and then just areas of concern, areas that we see in the future as being a threat to the education of our youth. I appreciate the sponsorship, and that gives us a moment to take up your time. So I have a great team. I've got some of them back here, so if it gets bad, they're my bodyguards. Except Mr. Brown walked off. He's the scariest of the group, but not really. But we got some cool things going on in Chickasha. We hired a new teacher the other day, and he had been with us before. He was one of our district teachers of the year, and he sent a message to me, and he said, I've got a good friend of mine became a principal down in Texas, and it's a school between Waco and Fort Worth, and he's sitting there listening to the superintendent speak, and the superintendent got up and he said, education is changing. And it's not the same as it was in 1950. It's not the same as it was in 1980. It's different. Our kids are different. The needs are different. We've got to start changing what we do. No longer can we set kids in rows, hand them a textbook, and say, go get them, Tiger. That's not working. And all the data, if you look at any data, you look at ACT results, SAT results, any of those things, it's not working. We've got to teach kids to be critical thinkers, and we call it, not only problem solvers, but solve issues, not just rote memory and regurgitation of facts. And so the superintendent went on and said, we're following this school up in Oklahoma, and we're really patterning ourselves after what's going on in a place called Chickasha. And they're doing some things out of the box, and we want to get on board with that. And so Wade, who's one of our middle school teachers, sent that because our focus has been, well, we know what isn't working. Let's get to what will work. And we're going to make missteps along the way, but at the end of the day, it's going to be better than what we've been doing. A lot of schools in Oklahoma are starting to take a different look at what we're doing. For the last 15 years, we've been under No Child Left Behind. We've been under a standards-based approach to education, quite honestly, and it's a low standard. And so for our kids, its standard should be whatever they can do and meet them where they're at and get them as far as they can go. Because quite honestly, if you have a child in an Oklahoma school and they are a fifth grader, but they're reading at a seventh grade level, they're going to get instruction at a fifth grade level, which is doing nothing for them. This is my awakening to this is one of my own children who sat outside of his third grade classroom almost every day. I thought he was in trouble. He wasn't in trouble. He was tutoring. He already knew what they were covering in class. And as superintendent, I thought, okay, that's kind of neat. He'll teach and know it better. But later I kept asking the question, that can't be good for him. I'm worried about my child. And that's quite honestly where we should be for every child. And so our initial leap into this was bumpy. There's some all kinds of issues raised because you're changing a paradigm. But the end result will be worth it for our kids, and that's what we do. That's why we do what we do. We had some interesting results. This really has trickled down into our elementary schools, and the most eye-opening data I've ever seen was we did a pilot with our kindergartners, first and second grade, up into fourth grade, I believe. Pam, you're going to have to help me on that one. And it was teaching kids literacy skills at their level and then grow them however we can grow them. And so we went in about right before spring break, and our kindergartners had 150 kindergartners. 34% of them were reading below grade level, which is about normal, with 34% reading below grade level. At the end of the school year, so 9 or 10 weeks later, we had one student out of 150 reading below grade level. Now that's, I don't know about you guys, that's remarkable. I've never seen anything like it in my entire career. I started in 1989 up until now, and I've never seen anything that was so moving. And that was confirmation that we've got to change what we do for the benefit of our kids. What would normally happen to a kindergartner reading below level is we would teach them at level and try to remediate them. And so if you put yourself in that kid's shoes, I'm not reading at level, but you're going to teach me at level, which is going to make me very frustrated because I can't do that. But then you're going to teach me 45 minutes every other day at my level. And you're talking about making a kid dyslexic. I mean, you're switching what you're asking of that child dramatically, but then you're putting them in a classroom which they cannot be successful. And then in first grade, what happens? The same thing. And in second grade, what happens? The same thing. By the time they become ninth graders and 10th graders, what happens to that child? They're reading way below level. They are dropouts. Those are the kids we lose. And so the earlier we start, the better this will be for our community and better it will be for our students. We've got great people that work in Chickasha Public Schools, and they're the ones that are driving this. They're the ones seeing these things, and they're the ones making these changes on the fly, and they should be commended for their work. The one major concern I've got, and it's the one I've told this group before, is we have a situation in our state at a state level that is getting worse. We just at the state level approved over 1,400 emergency certified teachers. I was doing just quick math over the last 4 years. We're almost at 10% of our certified teachers in the state of Oklahoma are emergency certified, which is wonderful that we've got people willing to do the job. But quite honestly, it's an amazing amount of resources go to try to train that teacher to get them on to where they can make an impact for kids. We just approved 8, I believe, for this fall. We approved 8 the year before. It is a disturbing trend, and it's every school in the state. I've not talked to a superintendent that has not hired an emergency certified teacher. I'm talking the littlest school districts in the state and the largest. Tulsa still has 200 openings. So our greatest resource, no offense to the oil and gas people, but it's our people, it's our students, and we're not doing them right as a state. And so there's got to be solutions. I'm not sure what's happening at 23rd and Lincoln. I have no idea what the problem is of getting everybody on the same page. But Pat, I'm going to quote you a while ago in our we need statesmen. We need people that are willing to go up and listen to other people's point of views and come to fair and equitable solutions for our state. And the most critical need we've got in education is not textbooks, it's not stuff, it's people. We have had openings before where we've had no one apply for 6 or 8 months for a position. And that's amazing. I was telling the story here to my colleagues. When I graduated in 1989, I desperately wanted to stay in the state of Oklahoma, but that was the latest oil bust. I sent my resume everywhere. I mean, I mailed those things. They had Kinko's back then, and I was firing those resumes out. And I was mailing them everywhere across the state. And the epiphany occurred when I believe it was Buffalo. I was trying to remember the school. But I was willing to work anywhere in Oklahoma. And I'm pretty sure it was Buffalo or Cherokee, one of those schools way out west. I sent a resume out, and they had an opening. And I got the form letter back, and it said, "I'd like to thank the 69 people that applied for this job, but you didn't make the cut," basically. And I thought, wow. Okay, if I can't get a job out there, and in my mind, now I've been to the Panhandle, wonderful people, but I didn't know much about it. In my mind, I was thinking, If I'm willing to relocate to the no man's land and I still can't get a job, then I've got to look elsewhere. And so my first job was in Houston and was able to get back to Oklahoma. Those days are gone. Now when there's an opening, 69 people are not applying for these jobs. We've got to build back the reputation that this is a good profession, that you can make a difference, and get those numbers back, because our kids deserve the best teachers they can get. They're the most influential people. What makes a difference in our kids' lives is not Dave Cash as superintendent. It's not, the most important employees we've got are the teachers. They are by far the most important employees we have. And so as a state, I have grave concern if we do not do something on that front. I don't know what that solution is, and I have no idea. But I do know the morale of teachers is very low, because they believe that as a state, they're not valued. In our state, they're not valued. And that's not true. We know that. You know that. But we've got to do a better job of patting them on the back and getting people behind them. So anyway, I'll be around later for questions. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, David. One of the things that's always fun for the chamber is, and just going to take one moment to compliment Chickasha Public Schools. We get the privilege, and many of you see parts of the chamber, and then other parts y'all don't ever see. And one of my favorite parts, and a great honor for me as your chamber president, is when the Chickasha Public Schools new employees come to the chamber, and we have a great fellowship to talk about why Chickasha is a great place. And this year we had 22, I believe, new teachers that came through on that, give or take a few. And the majority of them were Oklahoma kids. And then there were folks from as far as Pennsylvania and California and another country, I think Australia or somewhere. There was some country, I believe it was Australia. It was a good ways away, and it was not within the continental United States. Yeah. And I just thought, this is just so cool. And many of you have seen so many things that are really starting to happen there. And the business community really invest in junior leadership Chickasha. And we're really grateful for that investment, because those are the future leaders. And when we talk to them, we talk about the next 100 years of Chickasha and how they can make an impact by working with the family trees that are here, the businesses that are here, to really make an impact on Chickasha. And we thank you, David, for having the junior leadership program. It's very important to us. The next speaker is John Fever, and I've had the privilege of sitting on the back porch of John's president's house with him and his wife, Marilyn, and just talk about Chickasha and what can we do, and how can I, as your chamber president, help USAO. And we've had really good fellowships in that back porch on one occasion, and then lots of interactions ever since. And USAO is a golden gem for us, just like the Fairgrounds and Festival of Light and downtown and our nonprofits. Without further ado, John Fever.
Well, good morning. The audio portion of the radio station, when I'm at the college, I also go by the marketing office, and they airbrush me as well. So but I don't get that this morning. It's good to be with you. I enjoy these cool mornings. I have a Cocker Spaniel whose name is Drover, and Drover and I go get a newspaper every morning between 5 and 6, and so we enjoy my what? A little louder. They usually ask me to quiet down a bit, but I will get a little louder. And so Drover and I do enjoy going and getting newspaper in the morning. It wasn't long ago that a police officer stopped us for not waiting at a stop sign quite long enough. And I had forgotten to take my driver's license with me as well. Drover was in the back seat, and the officer was very courteous. She let us go on without a ticket or even a warning, and I'm quite sure it was the look of the dog in the back seat, something to the effect, what has this geezer gotten us into this morning that got us through this? Not sure what it is that I might say to you this morning that you would find most interesting about the college. We are in the process, I think probably most of you know, winding up what we're calling the Robertson project, bringing Robertson back online, which is on the south end of the campus, and that will give us another 50 or so spaces, residential spaces, and we're very much in need of residential units. We're 100% really in effect full otherwise on campus in terms of the historic Sparks Hall and also the Lawson Court complex. About 500 individuals are living on campus these days. The enrollments at the college are on the way up. We had a rather good increase in the overall enrollment and what's called FTE, how you're funded, this fall. And if you look at the enrollments across the state at other colleges and universities, a number of them are down. And why that is the case, some of them rather substantially. Why they're down, I'm not sure that I have an explanation for that. We were talking about reasons for enrollment fluctuations a moment ago. The economy always has some effect. It either pushes people toward enrollment or it sets people away from enrollment, and I think the economy probably is having that effect to some extent, especially as it is having an impact on rural two-year institutions and some of the more rural regional universities in the state. There is a general decline in the number of Oklahoma high school graduates that is going on right now, and institutions are turning increasingly. Those who are having some success with enrollment are turning to out-of-state enrollments. If you look at the University of Oklahoma and Oklahoma State University, roughly 30% of their total enrollments, and at least that in their first-time freshmen, are now coming from out of state. We are not a college, as I've told many Chickasha groups. We are not a college that recruits by hook or crook as many students as we possibly can relative to the number of programs, creating programs to try to attract as many students as we possibly can. That is the strategy of virtually nearly all of the institutions in the state, because state funding is significantly tied to the enrollment numbers. We have found that when this college in Chickasha, because of geography and politics and background and so forth, has tried to compete on the level of numbers, that it runs into trouble. So we are very selective in terms of the kinds of students that we go after. And of course, we have the highest admission standards of any of the state colleges or universities in the state. And that admission standard is designed to attract a certain kind of student that really is looking for a high-quality undergraduate education, and the kind of education that is usually found at elite, expensive institutions, mostly private, mostly out of state, but which they can't afford. And so they're looking to USAO to provide a public school alternative in that regard. I would give you a brief demographic overview of the students that attend here. They come from roughly 70 counties across Oklahoma. 40% come from the two major metropolitan areas of the state, Oklahoma City and Tulsa. About 80% of our freshman class comes from some 20 counties, running from roughly Comanche County to the south up to Tulsa along I-44. The average ACT of the students coming to USAO, freshmen, has averaged between 23 and 25 ACT in recent years. Yet 35% of them are minority, 70% of them are eligible for some form of financial assistance, and 60% of them are first-generation students. So it's a combination of very bright youngsters who are looking for high quality, yet looking to have access to affordable kinds of high quality education. 90% of the students that are at USAO are enrolled full time. The average age of all students is about 22 and a half. 18 average for first-time freshmen, so it's a very traditional age student body. 50% of all full-time students live on campus. 60% of full-time enrolled students live on campus. We have matched these bright kids to very bright faculty. They come from 40 different graduate schools across 23 states around the country, and we match them to a very rigorous and challenging curriculum, and that kind of match produces some of the highest retention rates and some of the highest graduation rates of any student population in the state. About 30% of our graduates go on to do postgraduate work. 50% of the STEM graduates to go on to do postgraduate work. Some 80% of the biology majors go on to do advanced postgraduate work. And the Oklahoma Tax Commission and the Oklahoma Employment Securities Commission indicate that graduates from this institution are employed at some of the highest rates of any of the four-year colleges in Oklahoma. Well, those are kind of a set of essentials about the institution, and it doesn't try to compete, I repeat, to be all things to all people, but rather to carve out a certain kind of niche, educational niche for itself, and go after students that we think find that niche appropriate and relevant to their needs. But I'd like to leave you in closing with two other thoughts and considerations. You need to understand USAO as Mark suggests implicitly, an existing industry, like other existing industries in the community. You're talking about an operation with a $25 million annual expenditure. It's responsible for about 9% of all jobs in the tax base in the community. You'd lose somewhere in the neighborhood of 800 jobs if USAO were to go away. Some of the higher paying jobs are located at USAO. For every $1 that you spend on recruiting a student to USAO that wouldn't be here otherwise, that student will spend over their stay here a 4-to-1 ratio on that $1 investment. If you look at the total impact using multiplier effects of the college on a 7-county region surrounding USAO, it's about a $40 million impact on the economy. That's very important for you to understand. And so, as a final comment, let me just say this to you. And this is something of a comment that's related to David's concern about teachers. There is a significant debate going on in government these days. It's not confined to Oklahoma, but it certainly is present in Oklahoma, and I rather suspect that as I look around the room, that debate is reflected in the attitudes of those who were gathered here this morning. And the debate is as to whether or not education is a public good or whether it's a private good. And the argument on the private good side is that, especially as it relates to higher education, is that if you want to go to college and you want to get a college degree, then you need to pay for it yourself. You, the student customer, and you, the family that supports the student. It's a private good, not a public good. For around 150 years in this country, we've argued, and especially since World War II and the Korean War, we've argued that education is a public good, that the investment of public dollars in education, the public schools, in career technology, in higher education is a public good, that it was good for the economy, it was good for the potential for economic growth, it was good for society, it was good for culture. Now there's the argument, especially as it relates to higher education, as to whether or not it's a public good or a private good. And so cuts have been coming substantially to higher education. In recent years, about 23% has been cut off of appropriations to higher education. We've gone from roughly 70% of our state operating coming from the state down to less than 50% of our budget now coming from the state operating budget. And students are paying substantially more. So public versus private. And there is one final feature of that public versus private argument, and that's to you who live in this community. And the argument is, in effect, those communities that have colleges located in those communities, we don't think the state really ought to be supporting those colleges in those communities. If you want a college in your community, you need to be finding ways to support that college other than through the use of taxpayer dollars. Those are the implications of some of the arguments that are going on at the state level, and that's something for you as voters and taxpayers to decide. In my case, is an institution, is an existing industry, $25 million industry in this community that's worth supporting in terms of community support, and is that kind of an industry worth supporting in terms of educating students, or should they be responsible for their own education? That's my comment for this morning.
Thank you, John. Many of you who follow Facebook and the Chamber will have noticed over the years that we've really been trying to support USAO, and in particular, they've been doing a great job about Around the Oval, and if you watch those video vignettes, it's what's happening on campus during the week. They've also been doing a great job of promoting and showcasing alumni of the institution, and we've been doing that. And one of our notable alumni, Tiata, the governor of the Chickasha Nation, hosted a red carpet celebration last night here in Oklahoma for the movie that's out, and I've put the trailer up for the movie. I hope you take time as a business community to go see the movie when and if it shows up in our theater, either here or somewhere, because that is about an individual leader who emerged out of USAO's history. And there's a beautiful statue commemorating that we dedicated as a community a couple of years ago with John and Tom Cole and others. And it's very special right there on the campus right at the Oval. So The next speaker that we have is very dear in that they give us some great staff here in Chickasha for the business community. Tracy and Dick Lowe and Angela Lewis and thousands of others, that's probably a stretch, are all involved in different activities, whether it be Kiwanis, Rotary, Chamber, EDC, etc. Tracy has served as the chair on EDC. Dick Lowe has served on our board and executive committee. Very good people, Gayla. And we're blessed to have your campus here. I know that CMS Willowbrook did a great job on the rebirth of the campus that I attended the dedication of, and some of the other leadership in this room made a pilgrimage up to El Reno. And it was just a wonderful celebration of all that is possible after a tornado. And we just hosted Leadership Chickasha last week with Paul's group in a beautiful renovated space on the campus here in Chickasha that is just terrific. And the investment continues there. So Gayla, tell us what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I really think it's awesome that we here in Chickasha, you all are having the State of Education at a chamber event. This is not something that I've been involved in with any of the other communities. And we have 14 different sending schools that Canadian Valley serves. So if they have State of Education information meetings, Canadian Valley hasn't been a part of them that I'm aware of. So I really think it's great. And what it shows is that you all do value education and understand that education empowers people to do more and be more than they ever thought they could be. And it starts with public education. Public education, Chickasha Public Schools, I know, as David said, they're using out-of-the-box thinking. Public education institutions educate all students, from low socioeconomic to the brightest of the bright. They all get an education through public education, and I just think that's so valuable because that impacts our community. It impacts not only that individual and what they can do and where they're headed, but it impacts socially and economically the community that those individuals are in. The higher education you go with an individual, the more likely they are to be involved in civic organizations, the more likely they are to be involved in the political aspect of things. They're better problem solvers. They're going to be educated and vote in an educated manner. So for Chickasha, you guys really have a great opportunity that many communities don't have, in that you've got a great public education institution, and you also have a four-year college that allows its patrons to increase their education level, and we know that empowers people to be better. I'd like to give you a few things about Canadian Valley. In Grady County, we serve 41% of Grady County juniors and seniors. Canadian Valley is a school of choice. Just because we open our doors doesn't mean that people are going to show up. So it's imperative that we stay on the cutting edge of what does the community need, what do our sending schools need, how are we going to meet the needs of our community and the businesses and industries that are located within our community. We do a lot of research about the different types of programs that we offer based on the industries that are in our area. In Chickasha, we have 14 full-time programs, and last year we graduated 138 students. 28 of those were practical nursing students. We have a really high pass rate. It's over 95% pass rate on the NCLEX. So for any of you healthcare types, you know that is well above the national average on the pass rate. Those students come out entry-level jobs, those practical nursing students, making about $41,000 a year. Um, some other things that we do at Canadian Valley that I think are important to mention. Our students are able to take, we offer pull-out programs for some of our math classes, Algebra 2, geometry classes. So those students, because they're small schools, they may only be able to offer math at one certain time of day, which may limit their ability to come to the Career Tech. So we offer it at the Career Tech Center in order to allow them to be able to come. And I think that's important and notable. We also have 5 of our programs that offer computer science credit. So the other thing I'm really proud of is our Next Step Scholarship. This was started a few years back. We were seeing an increase in the amount of students that maybe went off to college and then came back home because career exploration is kind of expensive at a 4-year university. And so we decided that we at Canadian Valley that we would offer a Next Step Scholarship so they can attend up until the age of 24 for free. So they do interest inventories and figure out which program is going to best meet their needs and get in there, get the certification, and go to work. The majority of our programs that we offer have either a state or some type of federal certification. Some examples are like 6G welding, multiple different welding certifications, A+ certification for computer science program, NET certification. We've got CNA and LPN for the health careers programs. I'm proud of the fact that Canadian Valley budgets money for those students to take those certifications. Many of those certifications might cost upwards of $300 or more. And so we put in the budget for each student who's in that program and successfully completes that program that we would pay for their certification opportunity to take that test. Last year we paid for 500 students' certifications. And for our CNA, we had 50 students who passed the CNA last year, and that's just from the Chickasha campus alone. One of the statistics that Tracy gave me, and I didn't ask you how you figured this up, but so if there's a question on this, you're going to get it. But he said the fact that 50 students pass the CNA from the Chickasha campus, that will generate $1.5 million back into our local economy. Impacting our economic development. Most of these students that graduate stay here in Grady County. 2 of our newest programs are pre-engineering and biomedical, and those programs offer students from like ALEC, Rush Springs, Tuttle, AMPO, an opportunity to take some higher end programs that their schools would not be able to offer. And so we're proud of that. We think that's really good and again, meeting the needs of our students. This program, the biomedical and the pre-engineering, also offer college credit, concurrent enrollment credit for college algebra, trigonometry, physics, and calculus. So we also have a work piece certification. That's an industry-recognized certification test through ACT, and all of our students leave with a silver, gold, or bronze certification. It's an evidence-based credential that signifies to the employer that those students have the essential skills and capabilities for workplace success. Let's see. Our Mentor Match program is Gay Pettit started that several years ago, and it has grown and gained momentum every year. This year we have 44 students and 46 mentors from 36 different businesses in Grady County. And the, 2 years ago, Gay won the Career Guidance Award through OKACTE for her work with Mental Match, and then this past year, the Mental Match program itself won through OKACTE the Distinguished Service Award. So we're really proud of that program. This is something we're seeing through the Department of Education and Office of Workforce Development is a push toward apprenticeship type programs. And so we really feel like we were ahead of the game and forward thinking when it came to the Mental Match program, because we've already for here in Chickasha, we already have that up and running and going, working towards that apprenticeship. Business and industry training, we served over 25,000 people, completed over 8,000 hours of safety training, and also did some specialized industry training to meet specific business and industry needs here in Grady County. We're really proud of the education that we provide, and we're committed to enhancing workforce development in Grady County. As you mentioned, we're excited about the renovation of the seminar center here at the campus, and then we also expanded our HVAC program, just 2 facility updates that I thought I'd share. So, thank you all.
Our panelists will be up here in the front, and thank you, all 3 of you, for taking time this morning. And on your table, the Oklahoma Oil and Gas Association has Oil and Gas 101, some great data, great statistics. You, as a business leadership group, are ambassadors for a big driver of our economy, oil and gas. So thank you, too, for coming up and doing the drive this morning. No fog. Bray and I texted last night about 11 o'clock, and I said, it's foggy here. I hope it's not in the morning, and it wasn't. So thank you for being the sponsor today. Get acquainted with these 2, if you guys will, as community leaders. Get acquainted with our new member, Jimmy Zeg, sitting right over here. And last but not least, it would be a great pleasure for me to remind all of you to tell John Mosley happy birthday. So we are officially adjourned. Happy birthday. He's hanging out with the Hawaiian shirt. You guys might even want to sing happy birthday to John if you're so emboldened, but happy birthday, John. And thank you to our social media partner, Cool, and George, and the rest of the team that put this on Facebook this morning. We're adjourned. Have fun.